I have behind me, we're all dressed the way that people from the 15th century would have dressed. We have various different iterations of society, and what I'm going to try to do is tell you a little bit about the kind of clothes that people wore in this part of the medieval period, and perhaps explain some of the strange and weird and unusual things that we can see in the lineup behind me. So, I am going to start with a question for the audience. Out of the lineup of people behind me, which end do you think is the poor end and which end is the rich end? Yeah? How do we know that? I know you guys are listening. Stop cheating. Okay, so from the clothes that the people behind me are wearing, we can see where they fit in to the various different classes of medieval society. So, of course, people who have a lot of wealth and a lot of income are going to be able to afford fine jewellery, fine fabrics, silks and velvets and all those wonderful luxurious things, which we will come to momentarily. But, unfortunately, not everyone is able to afford such luxuries. May I have the lower classes, please? They're rich in heart. Fabulous. Okay, so the lovely people here. Okay, so I'm going to go very quickly because I have a lot of volunteers and only half an hour, so let's see what we can do. Now, our lovely ladies on the end, the poor lady on the end, a fine professional rat catcher. An employee of her noble hounds. Although she has a very important job in, catching rats, we don't want those, nonetheless, she is not a rich woman. She cannot even really afford shoes. Very sad, very sad. She has a simple linen shift as the base layer of her clothing. Now, all ladies, through all the way up to the very, very posh ladies on the end, would have worn this garment. The difference is that poor Sandra on the end, the quality of her cloth is not going to be very good. It may well have been like unbleached linen, it's very plain, it may well have been coarsely woven, doesn't cost a lot of money. Whereas when we get all the way down to that end of the line, we could start seeing undergarments that are made out of imported silks and other things. Have your time going to the toilet. So these are joints, they are held on with points. There we go. Fabulous, thank you very much. And then obviously the bit in the middle is the codpiece. Okay, fabulous. He also has a somewhat raggedy coat that has a couple of holes in it, but it has been repaired. So in this time period, when your clothes start to get a little bit worn in, you cannot nip down to the nearest Primark and buy a new coat for a couple of quid. Everything, your clothes are really, really valuable to you. So everything would have been repaired and repaired and repaired and repaired until it basically fell apart, as can be demonstrated to this fine garment over here. So he's also wearing a linen coif. So one thing that you might notice about everyone who is in this lineup behind me is that we have all got something on our heads. So in this period of time, obviously we're a predominantly very Christian country, so people would have covered their hair, especially women would have covered their hair for religious reasons, but also for hygiene. So this simple linen coif is going to help to prevent his hair from getting particularly dirty, and may also help to prevent the spread of nasties and creepy crawlies and other horrible things that we might not want crawling around on our heads. Yeah, indeed, medieval cuties. We don't want them. Thank you. If you guys could parade along the crowd line so that everyone can have a look at your outfits, that would be excellent. Thank you. I'm just going to let the scum parade past us.
Why, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else want to see my braids?
We nearly had a mole yesterday, live in the fashion show.
Squirrels! Squirrels! Squirrels!
Okay, so we have stepped up a little bit in terms of what the next group of people are wearing. So the lady on the end is wearing a woolen overkirtle. So this is like an additional layer that would have gone over the laced kirtle underneath that gives you the support. That just makes you a little bit more presentable to be going out of doors and seen in public. She has a simple apron that will help to protect her dress from any sort of, I don't know, cooking and soot and dirt and grease and all sorts of things like that. So she's protecting the more expensive fabric of her garment with a simple apron. She has a very simple linen turban, which again will just help to keep her hair clean. And she also has a pouch, which I haven't mentioned yet. So, various people in this lineup, you might notice, have all got pouches hanging from their belts. I've got one sort of hiding under here. Most people will be carrying something like this. Did anyone have any guesses as to why? Someone said pockets. We have not yet figured out how to work pockets. So, if you think about the term cut purse, the term cut purse comes from basically cutting the purse from someone's belt so you can steal their cash. So this is effectively, kind of looks a bit like a jacket. This is like the sort of male outer layer at the time. So he also has a linen shirt on underneath, like the previously mentioned. Fabulous, flash of the shirt, risque. So the fabric that his doublet is made from is it's of a slightly better quality of fabric. So again, it's the same style of garment, it's just made of a better fabric. So again, he has the joined hose that are also patched on the rear end. Again, things would have been repaired continuously in the lifetime of the garment. And the emblems that they have on their clothing denote the household that they belong to and thus their loyalty. And these men are in fact enemies at this moment in time. So we may have a brawl in the middle of the fashion show. That is very true. So again, this outer garment here, the doublet, is in the colours of this gentleman's household, which is, I'm so sorry.
The household is Lovell, but this is for Richard III, King of England, the true King of England.
Some may disagree. And then this gentleman here is also wearing a style of livery that is designed to go over his military garment. So this is padding. You were recently in battle, were you not, sir?
Indeed.
So I've been very cruel and made him come and stand here in the hot sun in front of you all, but being very noble about it. And the household, sir, that you belong to?
Oxford, the winners.
He's not wrong. Fabulous. So obviously we know that he is a military man because of his various weapons that he has, obviously. But he also, both of these gentlemen, again, are wearing joined hose. Yours are particularly nice. They're very sort of, oh, have you got a paw point underneath? Okay, so we can kind of see the gentleman's paw point here that he has under his various other layers. The paw point is effectively like a doublet that doesn't have sleeves. It looks a bit like a waistcoat. But his hose, his trouser equivalent, are held up because they're attached to that paw point / doublet. They kind of perform the same function. I think that's it for you. Thank you very much. Parade.
Are these,
Are all... Two of the ladies that I have here are working on a craft that was done by women all the way throughout society. Even the highest status ladies down the end would have spun like this. So they're using a tool that, well, this lady's using a distaff, which is effectively a long stick that raw wool is bound onto, and then she is spinning that into yarn using a drop spindle. Very useful for beating drunk husbands. So please do come and ask us about the spinning, because it's one of those things that we could also talk about all day, but unfortunately we do not have time. But what I can tell you about this lady is that she is wearing a woolen kirtle, a nice woolen kirtle. It is quite nice. It has a seam at the waist, and this is groundbreaking medieval fashion. When we figured out that we could make dresses in two different halves, it was a game changer. It was an absolute game changer, because we can keep the tight fit at the top of the bodice that we need to support things that need to be supported, but we also can have enough fabric in the skirt that it makes a lovely kind of flared shape. Please twirl. We love a twirl. Fabulous. She also has, as I mentioned before, detachable pin-on sleeves. So these could be made of a higher quality of fabric. So instead of necessarily affording an entire garment of nice fabric, she can just make the sleeves. And these pin up here and then can be removed. Thank you. And so she could take them off to prevent them from getting dirty, or indeed they could be more of a practical, if they're made of a poorer quality of fabric, she could put them on if she's doing things like cooking to protect the other layers of clothes underneath. So we've already talked about this lady's alternate strip of fabric at the bottom of her dress. She also has a lovely pleated apron. So again, slightly fancier than the aprons we've seen before. consumes more fabric and is lovely and nice and white and very fresh and potentially new. It's not dirty yet. I got mine absolutely filthy in the space of about 5 minutes. So again, she's wearing a lovely kirtle that laces up at the front. She has a nice green hood as well that again helps protect from the weather, and a very fashionable long liripipe, just because it's nice. Ladies are now also really rather well dressed. So this style of gown that we can see quite often in this period, with this deep V neckline, very often trimmed with fur but also sometimes velvet, we call these Burgundian gowns. They were very popular in the court of Burgundy, which was like the height of high fashion, and so circulated down to England and other countries as we tried to emulate their extremely fashionable tastes. Thank you, gentlemen. So, the lady here first, her gown is made out of wool, which is very practical. Now, the quality of the wool is very, very high. High quality wool also would have been quite expensive. So she has a very, very vibrant pink colour. So when you're watching medieval movies and everyone is walking around in grey and brown and it's really boring, this is the colour that they could have produced with dyes that they had at the time. It is dyed using Brazil wood. The wood came before the country. So we were there first. So we also have a green wool collar and cuffs that match, and she has a wide belt to hold in the gown. Now, when these gowns aren't belted, they are like circus tents. They're enormous. And you draw everything in with the gown, and it allows you to twirl in a very satisfying sort of a way. Would you like to twirl? Woo! We love a twirl. So the lady also has a black woolen kirtle underneath. So again, the exposing of the kirtle like this also shows that your undergarments, essentially, could also be made from a high quality of fabric. Black was very, very expensive. It's a very, very expensive colour to dye. It takes 4 different kinds of dye to do it, and it's really damaging to the fabric. So to keep an intensely dark black fabric is very expensive. So this lady perhaps can't afford an entire gown to be made out of black, but she can afford a little bit. Fabulous. She is also wearing a hennin. In fact, all of these ladies are wearing hennins. Can we do a hennin turn? Now these are called truncated hennins, or we sometimes call them flower pot hennins because they look a bit like a flower pot. The very long, pointy versions that you see in lots of sort of medieval pictures and things like that were predominantly French, but they were also a little bit over here, but were more of a continental sort of a thing. Whereas we over here watch good practical English fashion. It's still not particularly practical, to be honest. So these sometimes had enormous wires coming out of the top of them with various different veils draped over the top, and are not really compatible with being out. Here, my Lord Thomas Stanley. Shout out for the Stanleys. Woo! We were on the right side at the end. we do win, we do win. So he is extortionately wealthy, is my Lord Thomas Stanley, and he has a lovely gown that has slashed sleeves. Now this allows us to see the fine velvet that his doublet is made from. So this is the doublet. Again, same garment, better quality. Silver buttons, velvet all the way down, pleated, padded shoulders to give him a wide and manly figure. Not that he needs it, ladies and gentlemen. So he also has, let me think, he has this odd purple thing that's hanging off his back. This is called a chaperon, and this is actually a kind of hat. He's rakishly wearing it somewhat as an accessory, unless of a practical garment, but it does signify that he is wealthy enough to have attended university. This man is an educated man. He can read. And we can also see that his hose are, again, black wool, very expensive. You could have done that a bit more dignifiedly. And the gentleman is also armed with a particular style of dagger, which I advise ladies and gentlemen to come and have a look at. This is called, and I will give it its actual proper name, this is called a bollock dagger. When you look at it closely, you will see why. Thank you. Obviously, he also has his sword. Again, this signifies him as a military man. Swords very much are a status symbol and also obviously a practical murderous weapon. Oh, excellent. He also, thank you, Sam. He also has spurs on his boots. So this does signify that he rides a horse, effectively. So you can afford to have, you know, a retinue. I mean, you are extortionately wealthy, aren't you, sir? Yeah. He buys me jewellery sometimes, so. Fabulous. Okay, cool. So the lovely lady and gentleman down the end. This gentleman is very, very, very well dressed. He has lovely tooled leather shoes. Again, joined hose, same garment, better class. A really lovely velvet pouch, which I do advise that people come and have a look at, because that is gorgeous. He has a nice bright red woolen coat. Again, he will have a doublet on underneath this. Ah, fabulous. He is a gentleman from the Howard household. We can tell this from his emblem again, the livery. There's a lot of rivalry in the Wars of the Roses. I don't know if you guys have noticed that yet. And we can also tell he has a gold chain.
One day, I will fall off.
Fabulous. Excellent. So he also has a gold chain, which has the sun in splendor and a golden lion on it. So again, very, very wealthy. Has a lovely gem on the front of his hat, which is gorgeous. And again, well, you know, pearls. Pearls were very expensive. Pearls were like kind of the in jewel to get, if you could. 1 minute. Okay, so very, very quickly, as I am swiftly running out of time, we're going to move on to the lovely lady and gentleman at the end. Now, this lady has, again, a dress in the style of the court of Burgundy. Hers is embroidered with pearl beads. It is made from silk. She has an enormous amount of jewellery. This is clearly a lady of very high status and wealth. And the Duchess of Norfolk, ladies and gentlemen. As Grace does with her presence today. Thank you so much. Her belt is embroidered, and again, the silk lining, if I get not know, is it made from silk? It is lined with silk. The velvet collar and cuffs, again, would have been very expensive. And the gentleman on the end has a extortionately expensive and gorgeous black floor-length gown. The most expensive collar that money can buy. Is it lined with silk? Yes. Lined with silk. The doublet is silk. He is dripping in gold and jewels and is clearly a man of enormous wealth.